minha gente, how are y'all? This is the first video ever and I am nervous. If you hear the fan, no you don't. I have to have it on blast because I'm nervous and I'm sweating, but let's get to it. I think I'm actually really excited to start this channel. I've been saying that I want to start it for like months now, especially with the whole TikTok debacle. I feel like this is a long time coming. So here we are. My name is Louisa and this is Louisa Likes Books. I feel like me, just like almost every other girly on Book Talk. Hi, how are you? I'm also migrating. I'm trying to get booktube going. I've been trying to post a couple of my TikToks on shorts and they've been doing okay, but I really like the fact that I can just yap. Anybody around me will tell you I'm a professional yapper. So I feel like I have more time, more space, and the ability to talk as much as I want, which is awesome. I saw a couple of the girlies that are starting their booktube channels doing a new booktuber tag, and I thought that was so freaking cool. Not only does it allow you to meet me as a reader, but also to know what the hell this channel is gonna be. I do intend to make this as like casual and chaotic as I am. I'm hoping that I'm gonna be able to add some lightness to booktube, but also I'm a type A perfectionist, so I'm hoping that I'm gonna be able to provide some reading guides, some author universes and how books connect. I feel like there's one specifically that I have in mind already that I've started taking notes on, so hopefully y'all stick around to see more. But yeah, without further ado, let's get to the new booktuber tag questions. Why did I start this channel? I feel like every other girly that is on Book Talk will tell you the same thing. I feel like with the whole debacle of it being banned, not being banned, what the hell's gonna happen with that freaking app? Nobody freaking knows. I really started this year telling myself that I was gonna try to diversify my book content as much as possible. I feel like starting a YouTube channel has been something on my mind for the past years, and just now I feel like that was the push that I needed. So yeah, like I said, I am a professional yapper, especially about my hobbies and interests, i.e. books and reading. So I felt like starting a YouTube channel would be a perfect way to be able to do longer form of content, that it's not, viewers stopped watching your video in 2 seconds, TikTok. What makes me new and unique? Oh, I don't know. I feel like this is a question of like, what should we hire you? I don't know. I need money. I think what makes me new and unique is, like I said, I'm very chaotic and a yapper. There's no TMI. Sometimes I catch myself talking too much and doing too much with people that I just met, and I think that's the charm. Especially with reading romance and fantasy, which are my preferred genres, which I'll get to in a second. There's so many like intimate moments and romantic moments and just like human moments in my books that I would love to share, so it wouldn't make sense for me to keep my personality out of it as well. So I think what makes me new and unique is that I bring a diverse voice, hopefully, to the book world. Hopefully my perfectionism won't stop me from actually putting out content. When did I start reading? My whole family is really into reading. What got me into reading was probably poetry, romance, but romance has been a constant, but obviously a series that was extremely popular around when I was like in middle school were like Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, Divergent. But I also remembered Narnia for some reason. I hope my mom still has that book somewhere in her house, but it's a chunky ass book, the Narnia series, and I remember hefting that bitch in my book bag. But then with high school and college, I kind of stopped reading as much, so when the pandemic hit, I was like, you know what, the world is on fire, might as well read some romance. And ever since 2020 and 2021, I started reading more and obviously getting more involved in Book Talk and Bookstagram, and now we're here with a booktube. And as for books that started me back on reading on like with Book Talk and Bookstagram, The Hating Game, I've thought of reselling this, but honestly, this is so sentimental to me. Obviously there's like stuff that you can criticize about this, and it's not necessarily one of my favorite books ever now that I think back to it, but it's sentimental because it got me back into reading and got me back into accepting like my love for romance, and how there's like community of romance readers and fantasy readers just like me that also read stuff like this, and we can talk and be friends. So I think I'm keeping this forever. Why do I love reading? This is so hard to explain. I mean, not because it's so unique. I feel like I've never lived an original experience ever, but when I was thinking about what to say to these questions, the first thing that came to mind was that quote, "A reader lives 1,000 lives." Again, the most basic ass, she's just like every other girl, the most basic ass bitch response ever. But listen, I love being like every other girl. That's such a true statement. That's such a true sentiment. I truly feel like, especially when it's a good book, especially when it's a series that sucks me in into the world. I feel like I can visualize these people. Like, we're friends. That's one of the main things that I love about reading, is you can put yourself in other people's shoes. You can go through experiences without having to do it yourself, but still feel the feelings. And the second reason I think why I loved reading that came to mind was something that one of my favorite authors, Kennedy Ryan, talks about when she does interviews a lot, which is specifically romance is already guaranteeing you a happily ever after. So she talks about how she uses romance books to work through things and talk about things that are really hurtful and impactful in people's lives. Because it's romance and it already guarantees you the happily ever after and the good feels and the romantic parts, you're able to work through those hard things as well without feeling like more depressed after you read it. Which is a perfect segue for the next question, which is what kind of books do you read and what are your favorite genres? I feel like if anything, this whole time I've been talking about romance. So yes, romance is my absolutely favorite top genre ever. I dabble a little bit, very light cozy fantasy. High fantasy is definitely not for me, at least so far. I'm extremely scared of high fantasy. I do have the Poppy War trilogy that my husband got to me for Valentine's Day. I loved it. That is like already very scary to me, and I haven't read it. I'm gonna feel like I don't know what anything is or whatever is happening. I'm gonna feel lost, and I'm just gonna be like, what the hell's happening? But there's some books like That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemon that I absolutely adore. And obviously it's not contemporary romance, it's fantasy romance. It is cozy and light and quirky and fun and spicy, which is my favorite thing, but it's still fantasy. As far as genres within romance, every time a publisher or someone emails me, I always list my top 3, which is historical romance. This is one of my favorite series. Contemporary romance. This is one of my favorite series. And dark romance. This is one of my favorite series. I don't necessarily list out romantasy or fantasy with a little bit of romance like this because, like I said, I don't really read high fantasy yet. Hopefully, I will evolve into fantasy and reading more fantasy and being okay with following along. But even Legendborn, also, if you've read Legendborn, don't give me spoilers, please. I know Oathbound just came out and everybody in their room are reading that and are loving it, and I love that for them. But I've read, I think, half, and I soft DNF it, which means I probably will go back to it. I'm so interested in it. Every other book bestie of mine is obsessed with that series, and honestly, from the little bit that I read, like less than half of it, I was intrigued. Like, there's so much happening, but also it made me anxious because there's so much happening. My girl Brie does not get a break, and I was anxious for her. I just need to be in the mood, which is another thing I should add. I'm extremely into mood reading. If you think mood reader, that's me. Especially with my channel, my YouTube channel now. I might do TBRs just so you can see how awful I am at following a TBR because of how much a mood reader I am. I feel like if I wake up and I feel like a dark romance, I'm just gonna pick that up. If I feel like a monster romance or an alien romance, I'm just gonna pick it up or reread Ice Planet Barbarians, which is one of my all-time favorite series ever. Predicting every month what mood I'm gonna be in 4 weeks for the month is crazy work for me. What's your favorite book is a heinous, blasphemous question that I refuse to acknowledge. But I will highlight a couple that I really, really like. As for mafia / dark romance, I really like, this is a recent read that I really, really loved, Syndicate of Sins by Mari Maravilla. This is the second of the Toxic Paradise series, and I'm obsessed with this series so bad. All the 3 FMCs are extremely badass. Like, that's the main thing that Mari Maravilla says she wanted to do with this series, which is to show in a mafia dark romance how badass the FMCs can be, and they can save the guys and the guys can save them, and everybody's badass and bloodthirsty. This one specifically is a white choose. She ends up with 3 sons of mafia kings, if that makes sense. Like the son of the Irish mob, the son of the Russian Bratva, and the son of the Yakuza clan, which is the Japanese mafia. She ends up with all of them, which I freaking loved. I loved how badass each of them individually are, including her. She's like this top notch hacker. I guess you could say she's a hacker, but she also gets down with a knife. Don't mess with her. But she's like the type of person that before she knows you, she already knows all your backstory. She can dig any type of information out of anything ever. The three of them are trying to disconnect themselves from their respective mafia families, and they all end up being together, and it's freaking awesome. I freaking love this. I love how their individual relationships are formed. I love how tight the relationship between the three boys were since the beginning, and how they were basically like into like mentally communicating how as soon as they saw this girl, it was their girl, and nobody's gonna stop them and nobody's gonna touch her. This one is again one of my all-time favorites, Scarred by Emily McIntyre. This is probably my favorite of the series. This is the Never After series. Each book is loosely based in a fairy tale, like a Disney fairy tale. This one is The Lion King, and Scar gets the girl. Don't worry about it. Simba, or who passes as Simba, is an idiot and he deserved to die. Spoiler. Not really. I feel like you know that you know that since the beginning. I love this. I love how protective of her he is. I love how she's so cunning and so smart and knows what she has to do. Doesn't back out from doing hard things even while crying. You'll see that that's one of my favorite things ever. Maybe I should do a dedicated video, question mark. But when FMCs specifically do stuff scared, I might be exposing myself with that one. But anywho, when the FMCs do things scared, like hard things, even though they're scared and they still do it and they still try their hardest, even if they're crying and desperate, it's just so empowering. Just so cool to see overall. As for historical romance, I will drill into every historical romance reader out there that you should read Beverly Jenkins. If that's my mission in the bookish space, I will be happy. If at least the historical romance lovers pick up with just one Beverly Jenkins book. She has a huge backlog. Just pick one. And they're so freaking good. Indigo specifically is one of my latest reads, and it was like an instant perfect historical romance book for me. 6,000 stars, to be honest with you. Not even 5. It broke the scale at this point. Indigo talks about 2 workers in the Underground Railroad in the 1850s, 1860s. Beverly Jenkins does write historically accurate Black historical romance, which I'm absolutely for. So wonderful how she weaves culture and history that is not taught nearly enough in the schools about Black stories. You can see while you're reading how much research she's done, but obviously you can see at the end she always adds in her acknowledgments at the end a list of all the research that she's done in books that she references and so on. Like, I want to be in your brain. The main thing that keeps me going back to Beverly Jenkins' book is not only the history that should be taught but isn't, and that I feel like I'm consuming every time I read one of her books, but also, and most importantly for me, the romantic scenes. The way she does the forbidden, the angst, the tension, because it is historical, so most likely they aren't married, or most likely there's something that's happening that they're not supposed to be together, or not supposed to be seen together, or doing whatever they're doing. I'm looking at you, Hester. She makes me believe in romance and real love every time I read one of her stories. Wicked Beauty by Katie Roberts, another one of my favorites. She's one of my all-time most read authors, just like Beverly Jenkins, but it's absolutely separate. It's absolutely different, I would say. Obviously, it's still romance and spicy romance to that, but one of the main things that I love about Katie Roberts' writing in general is how consent is so prioritized and safe words are so well discussed, and everything is very bluntly said, but in the best way possible, because then it allows the characters to explore as much as they want in a safe environment, and you feel that while reading their books. As for goals for 2025, I usually just keep my reading challenge as 100 books. I do have a Goodreads and a StoryGraph, by the way. Feel free to follow me there. But I usually, for the last couple of years, have exceeded that. As I said, I am a perfectionist, so I usually don't want to go 150 or 200 books as a goal. I feel like it will take some of the fun out of reading for me, which is not something I absolutely want to do at all. Another reading goal that I usually tend to have in every other year is to read as diversely as I can and to prioritize indie authors as much as I can as well. Something that I always catch myself thinking is I'm doing the marketing for indie authors that traditionally published authors have their publishers do, if that makes sense. So I need to shout even louder for indie authors, especially because there's so many freaking awesome books that are as good as traditionally published that just happen to be indie and don't happen to get to as many readers' hands as possible. So I'm trying to do that work. For one of my favorite quotes, I felt like that was so freaking hard. I spent like 10 minutes trying to find one. That was so freaking hard to decide. I have so many, but I think I would remiss if I didn't include Pride and Prejudice in here. This is one of my copies. I have as a goal to collect as many as possible. And I obviously think one of the most famous ones is "You're too generous to trifle with me. If your feelings are still what they were last April, tell me so at once. My affections and wishes are unchanged, but one word from you will silence me on this subject forever." I feel like it shows how bewitched by Lizzie Darcy was, and how he was willing to fight for her and continue to woo her, but also he was showing her that he could be understanding if that was her final say in it, and he would just grab his little broken heart and go back home. So yeah, I hope that helped you get to Louisa and Louisa Likes Books and what we're hopefully going to be able to do. I will say I'm extremely excited, if not extremely nervous as well. I already have great ideas for reading vlogs, for book hauls, book unhauls, reading guides, and reading orders of authors. So feel free to make a comment if you've loved or read any of these books or what you're excited to see. I would love to know what other people would like to see from me. Feel free to follow me in any of my other book related accounts. I have a bookstagram and a book talk, and now obviously a booktube, which I'm so freaking excited for. Now I need to shove all these books back. Okay, beijo, bye.